Elite design, better comfort, more grip. Our new Pure Grip Socks Elite add engineered compression, an anti-blister base, and more grip to keep you locked in. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
I'd say for the better part of 15 years now, the speed boot category has been by far the most popular. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that, but I think it really boils down to the main marketing points being focused around being faster and scoring goals, two things that pretty much everybody wants to do. Having said that, here are 3 reasons why you should not wear speed boots. And really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2024. Starting off with what is technically not a reason, but it needs to be mentioned, and that is this concept of boots by position, where the marketing would suggest that if you're a winger or a striker or just a fast player in general that uses speed as a big part of their game, it makes most sense for you to wear a speed boot. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think there is definite benefit to be had from a lighter boot that's more responsive with more aggressive traction if speed is one of your major assets. Having said that, if you're the fastest player on your team, you're still going to be the fastest player on your team if you're not wearing speed boots. Nor can the slower players on your team go and get the best speed boots and show up and automatically become faster. It just doesn't work that way. Long story short, boots by position is a suggestion and not a rule. Which leads us into reason number 1 why you should not wear speed boots, and this is a mistake that I made over and over again when I was a kid, and that is comfort. As much as every brand these days does their best to create a shape and fit that is going to work well for the vast majority, there are going to be plenty of situations where a certain pair of football boots that you really want just don't fit you properly. And if fit is an issue, typically comfort will also be a problem. And if your boots are killing your feet, then they're probably not the right ones for you. While it isn't nearly as much of an issue now as it once was, the Mercurial series is known for having that super tight fit. So for somebody with wider feet that maybe need a little bit of extra volume as well, there's plenty of people that jam that foot type into a tighter, slightly narrower fitting Mercurial and therefore end up with this very restrictive, uncomfortable feel, either causing cramping, potentially blisters, and just general discomfort throughout the entire lifetime of the football boots. And don't get me wrong, this is something that you can totally get used to, playing in that little bit of discomfort. But if you have the option to be comfortable, why wouldn't you? And like I said, I did the exact same thing when I was a kid, jamming my feet into speed boots that didn't fit me well, were super uncomfortable, caused blisters, but because those were the boots that I really wanted to wear, I just dealt with the pain. So I suppose I'm looking at this now from a more mature perspective, but if comfort is genuinely an issue for you, where during the match you're thinking about how much your feet hurt and you've only ever worn speed boots, it might be worth a shot to venture into another category, because you might be surprised at how much comfort you're leaving on the table. Reason number 2 why you shouldn't wear speed boots is injuries, where one of the signature elements of the vast majority of speed boots is going to be a super thin barefoot feel to the upper, which makes for a great feel for the ball. However, when your opponent steps on your foot, you have little to no protection whatsoever. So right off the bat, if you're somebody that tends to get stepped on a lot for whatever reason, having some boots with a little bit of extra padding, which can typically be found outside of the speed category, might not be a bad idea. With traction also being a factor as it relates to potentially avoiding an injury, where if you're somebody that tends to roll your ankle, perhaps you've suffered some knee injuries in the past, and you've only ever worn speed boots with super aggressive bladed studs that, yes, provide plenty of bite when pushing off, which makes for that super responsive, aggressive feel underfoot, but it also restricts your ability to twist and pivot. And that little bit of break in the grip when your foot is planted can make the difference between suffering a serious injury and not getting injured at all. And of course you can get aggressive bladed studs on football boots outside of the speed category, but if you've always found that you tend to injure yourself from having too much grip, especially if you regularly play on artificial grass, it might not be a bad idea to look into something with some rounded studs. And then finally, reason number 3 why speed boots might not be right for you is actually touch. Where, like we talked about when discussing the protection of a pair of speed boots, a common characteristic is a super thin upper that offers a barefoot feel, where realistically, this is a point that is very much about personal preference, but if you've only ever tried a pair of speed boots with only super thin uppers that offer no padding whatsoever, I'm not saying you necessarily have to try something with a leather upper, but even something with a knitted material that just has that little bit of cushion to it, you might be surprised at how much that little bit of a dampening effect can actually make your control feel that much better. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that control boots will actually improve your ability to control the ball, but again, speaking from personal experience, I've always found that having a little bit of padding to the upper creates an element of forgiveness as it relates to touch on the ball. Where again, when I was a kid, I always thought the best feel for me was the boot that was as thin as possible. And it wasn't until I actually tried something with a little bit of padding to the upper that I realized, wow, that feels significantly better to me. My point being that it's not a bad thing to try something new because you might be surprised at what you actually like the feel of.